of my entrance music.
Lazy fucking man one. Trying to fuck your girl's mind. Tell me, how's that cute little couple gonna feel about that? Uh-oh. You know, Leia just gave me this to kill you. That's what she said.
Hello, everyone. Some of you may recognize that, but I won't give it away right now. So, yeah, A&R, it's the most loved and hated job in the business. People love you because you can give them a record deal and lots of money, and they hate you just because you are the man. And I was never comfortable being a man. So when you, A&R stands for artist and repertoire. It means being a talent scout, but also developing the artist and working with them on their song selection and producing or finding a producer for an album, and then being the one that has to translate the band's expectations and potential to the rest of the company. So basically, you piss everyone off. The band, the manager, the label, but hope that you can find some through line. Plus, you get no training. You're just thrown into the deep end and given enough rope. So, like most of you in the room, I also was a big film fan, in particular David Lynch. And in 1986, I went to the week that Blue Velvet opened, and I saw that movie just as a fan. Of course, loved it. Stayed for the credits as I usually do. And over the credits, there was this incredibly angelic song by a woman I'd never heard of. I stayed to watch for her name. And her name was Julie Cruz. So then the next day, I called my friend at CAA, who happens to know everyone, and asked him if he knew David Lynch and if he could find out who this Julie Cruz was. And was she an artist that was viable and available to sign? And in fact, my friend Brian got in touch with David and said, yeah, she's signed to me. And my partner, Angela Badalamenti. In fact, she wasn't, but that's nothing new if you know David at all. So I asked Brian if he could hook me up and set up a meeting or something, or send me some demos, and he said no, he's already actually talking to A&M. He's about to do a project for his next film with A&M. I said, oh, right, okay. And that is something called Ronnie Rocket. But he needs songs. Because Ronnie Rocket is a robot rock star. And I told him, my friend said, that you have a good record collection, you know a lot about music. So maybe you could get together and play music. Well, what happened was Brian said, look, David wants to come over and just sit and play music. And I, wow, okay, really? And I had a little duplex in Silver Lake at the time, just a one-room shack. And one night, here came Brian, David, and David Anderley, who's the head of A&R for A&M Records, who I wasn't warned was coming, and came just because he was not going to let me get on the good side of David Lynch. So I got my best cheap wine out, and we sat in the living room, and I just played records, and we drank wine, and David was as cool as you would expect. David Lynch, David Anderley just burned a hole on the side of my head the whole time. and it went well enough, but I wasn't expecting anything. So I didn't hear anything back. Brian said it was fun, that's all. But he was doing this project with A&M, so Warner Brothers was out of the question. That was in around September of '86. Come the new year in January, January, I got a call. My secretary said that David Lynch's office was calling. And I said, really? Okay. And I picked up the phone, and it was David. And he knew that I was interested in Julie Cruz. Apparently the Ryan Rocket project fell through. And he said, in his inimitable voice, Kevin, I want to sign to Warner Brothers Records. So there I was, signing one of my heroes without hearing any music, and without knowing if she was actually signed to him. But long story short, we did a production deal with Angelo and David. David said they had a whole album written already. Well, they didn't. It took a year before they got in the studio. And when Julie did her record in New York in the winter of '88, that's when the seeds of the music for Twin Peaks was born. In fact, if you hear her album, you'll hear songs that were in Twin Peaks and ultimately the theme song itself. It was pretty magical, and for me, I felt like I was in a Trojan horse in this business that I had no business being in. So it takes a while between recording and mastering and putting a marketing plan together and getting an album out in stores. So while I was waiting for that, among other things, to develop, I found a band completely unlike David Lynch called Power Mad, a speed metal band out of Minneapolis. And I signed them, and we began working on a record about the same time, in the middle of winter, spring '88. And it turned out I was really happy with it. So that July, I had to go meet with David at his house to discuss the upcoming Julie Cruz record. And if we're going to get Julie on the road, what the cover was going to be, all that sort of thing. And he was a little busy, but it was just David and me in his house, the Lloyd Wright house on Sonalda, off of Outpost. Stark, as you would imagine, minimalist, but tasteful enough. So he just told me to hang out until he was ready, and he sent me to his kitchen, where I went through all the cupboards, of course. and opened the refrigerator. I was a fan, and this is my only chance. And then I opened the freezer, and in the freezer was a sculpture he had made out of either liver or cheese.
It was
I can't
cheese.
remember. Cheese?
It was cheese.
Oh, it's cheese. Okay.
I know for sure. It was cheese.
What's that?
I know for sure it was cheese.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
That's the only cheesy thing you've said that I appreciate. So this visage of a human head with the eyes sunken was covered with dead ants.
Yes.
That he had put it on his kitchen counter, just the cheese in the head, and allowed the ants to take over it
Yes. No.
to see what would happen.
For sure. I was there.
You were there.
I know Jen Lynch, and I saw it. And
Okay.
he would let the ants eat the cheese, and then he would photograph it.
My background singer.
I'm sorry to interrupt,
So,
but I just wanted you to know it was cheese and it was ants.
okay, so I'm not crazy. It's a long time ago. So it became the second album cover for Julie Cruz, The Voice of Love. If you look it up, you'll see the cheese ant sculpture.
It's Julee.
Wow. Rest her soul. She died last year.
Oh.
And Angela died just 3 months ago. What time is it? So here we are in the summer of 80. It was 80, yeah. And I had just come back from the mastering lab to master Power Man's first album. I was really proud of it. And David, I didn't quite know his musical taste. I mean, I did play him records, but if you remember Blue Velvet, he's got Roy Orbison, he's got Bobby Vinton, and for some crazy reason, I thought he might find, just because it was such an odd idea, Power Mad interesting. I didn't tell him anything about the band, but I asked him if he, when we finished, if he had a minute and would take a listen to this new group I signed. I just come back from the mastering lab. It was hot off the presses. So we went in his living room. I think it was I can't remember. Try and make you can remember. The floor was, I think, brushed cement or polished cement or just
It's polished cement.
polished cement. With red velvet crushed couch and love seat, and at the far end was a Bang & Olufsen turntable, straight arm turntable, and just at that time just the greatest sound system I'd ever seen. So he said, "Yeah, let's play. Give it to me." So there's, I don't know, 10 songs on it, and if any of you have had the misfortune to play a tape for an A&R person, I've been on both sides of the desk, and you know just the most demeaning experience of having a song played for maybe a few seconds and then skip to the next song, and you're there going, "Oh, just fuck you, man. This is what So there he was. I was the weasel on one hand, on the other hand, I was one of those sad people just trying to get accepted. And he put the record down, stood up by the turntable while I sat far away in the middle of this couch. And he played the first 10, 15 seconds of the record and then lifted the arm. And I thought, David, I didn't know. I wasn't sure if you like it. And then he dropped the needle again and played another 15 seconds, the same 15 seconds, the first song on the first side. And then he did it again and again and again. And finally he picked up the arm and he said, "Kevin, I want Power Man to be my next movie." That's what I said. I laughed hysterically and cried. So, it just so happened that I had to take that same acetate and go to Minneapolis a few weeks after that to play for the band. So, one thing about having signed David Lynch and you're out trying to scout bands or working with other bands that are on the roster is the first thing everyone asks you can you get David Lynch to do my video? And I'd already kind of had a conversation about that with David and promised him I would never offer his services. He was not interested. He was never going to do that. And so Powerman, every time, we had been working together for over a year, and it became almost a standing joke. They pin me against the wall somehow and say, "You're going to get David Lynch to do our video, aren't you?" And I have to go through the whole rigmarole. And it was true then. I went to Minneapolis, and because they knew that I was vegetarian, and at the time I was foolish enough to talk to them about Tantra, they said, "Look, we're going to take you out to dinner to celebrate this time, okay?" I said, "Okay, where are you going?" "Well, you'll find out when we get there." And we got there, I had to go up this elevator and open up to this steakhouse called Manny's.
Oh.
And not only is it one of the oldest and best steakhouses in Minneapolis, but they wheel around the cuts of beef on a cart. And so they bring it right in front of your face with blood fusing from the meat and the fat jiggling and pools of blood on the plates. And they were laughing their heads off at me because they knew I couldn't eat any of it, and now I would just throw up right in front of them. So anyway, I appreciate a good laugh. That's my name, isn't it? But so the next day, there happened to be a promotion for the B-52s, who were also on Warner Brothers label. They were doing a show in town, and the local promotion guy arranged for a party on a barge in a lake with all the local record company people and record store people and DJs and me and Powerman. But no one knew or really cared who Powerman was. So then again, they upped the ante a bit. They threatened to throw me off the barge if I didn't get David Lynch to do their video. They had me up against it. And I said, "Look, he's not going to do your video. Please stop. Let's just have a good time." He said, "Come on, why can't he do the video?" He said, "Look, he's not going to do the video." And then excuse me, it's emotional. I reached in my bag and I said, "But he wants you to be in his next movie." And I gave them the script. I have the script with me, Wild at Heart. And their name is on the first page. Enter Powerman. He used their music as a recurring theme in the film, a motif. Every time there was a moment of tension and particularly violence, he played that 15-second riff that he played over and over again in the living room that time. So now I had them. No, they were speechless and almost in tears. This heavy metal, macho, beef-eating guys. So at this time, the same time Julie Cruz's record came out, Powerman's record came out, and a number of other artists I worked with. And that's when I found out about, Wild Heart was not going to be filmed for another better part of a year. And Twin Peaks had just started and wasn't the phenomenon yet that it was going to be. But there was a lot of things swirling around, not the least of which is Powerman being flown out to be on camera behind Nicolas Cage as Sailor and Laura Dern as Lula. If you remember the scene where they're in a club and Nicolas Cage is wearing a leopard skin jacket and gets in a fist fight, as one does. Behind him on stage playing Slaughterhouse, the song that is motif, is Nicolas Cage on front.
I can't take no more of this radio. I never heard so much shit all my life.